We're going to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand to our dynamic duo right here, Jolene and Serene. Please come on stage. Welcome. Your wardrobe is nicely coordinated too. I was almost going to say that Jolene and Serene looks like sisters or partners that you just gotten to know, but they get on really well. You are, laughing and chatting and joking while you're waiting just there. But let me introduce you to our two speakers on stage. We've got trainer from the Institute for Financial Literacy, Jolene Ong. Big hand, please, for Jolene. And also Senior Deputy Director at Retirement Savings of CPF Board, Miss Serene Go. Serene. Can I just wonder, did you guys know each other before today's session?
Well, we met prior to that.
That explains why. You have wonderful chemistry together. Yeah, and you were chatting and laughing and joking a little bit on the side. So I thought, that's wonderful. And Jolene and Serene almost sounds like a team.
We never realized until you mentioned.
You don't think so?
Let's make a duo.
The dynamic duo. So right here today, our topic is on mastering your money management. We'll maybe like to understand a bit as well. For example, in your line of work, you've actually done for both private corporate clients as well as now serving the public as well. What are some of the main topics that you would be concerned about when it comes to money management? Can you just tell us a few?
So indeed, you are right, Danny, because I transited from corporate banking to a trainer at the Institute for Financial Literacy, where it's more personal finance. So transiting to personal finance is a lot more closer to the ground because you are really looking at the individual and how it actually affects the individual life. So given that Singapore, we are a financial center, we see a great proliferation of financial products arising in the past 10 years or so. So with that, it really gives the individual a lot more options, but it also means that the knowledge on these products, the risk behind them, has to be properly understood. Yeah, and then of course, we also have information that is so readily available today, given that we are in a digital age. And we also encourage people to always authenticate the source of information to make that informed decision for yourself.
Okay, so knowing where the sources are from. Is it very different when you are facing public right now versus when you are serving corporate clients?
Well, this is, of course, a much greater setting, of course. It's my honor.
Full capacity, we've got so many people right here at our session, so we'll be sharing a lot of wonderful information. Congratulations to CPF Board, actually. I read good news this morning. Singapore has made progress over the last 1 year in 2024. If you're reading Straits Times, there were top 10 areas, and one of that, retirement planning. We've got enough funds for most Singaporeans, and they actually attribute it to having CPF as part of our financial planning.
I think we are really happy to have Singaporeans have placed their trust in us, and I think this is really evident in the amount of top-ups that we received over the years. It has been increasing over the years, actually, and it's hit a record of quite a few billions in the first 3 quarters of the year. So I think this actually is a milestone to us, and we hope that everyone can continue to put your trust in us, and we are committed to be a perfect partner to you guys. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here chatting with you guys as well. But personally, I'd like to find out. For example, we just read in papers this morning, for those who are turning 55 or even 55 and beyond, they are actually in a very safe place. So I'd just like to find out, if you're 55 and below, can you raise your hand right here? Hopeful, youthful people we have here. If you're 55 and above, can you just nod and smile at me? Yeah, because I'm reaching there as well. I want to know what I can do as I'm approaching 55. Maybe for a start, we can ask both of you a common question. What is the age group that you mostly come into contact with in your line of work?
Right. For me, when I do training, you'll be surprised. Actually, the demographics is getting younger. We even have people in our 20s. We used to think retirement planning is something people broach or even think about in their 30s. But it's very encouraging that we are starting to see younger audience, right? Even in their 20s, they recognize that retirement planning should start the first day they start work. Right? So we are very heartened that people are actually taking it a lot more seriously. They recognize that if they start earlier, they actually benefit from having more time on their side.
Mm-hmm. And for Serene?
Yeah, because I'm in the retirement savings department, actually this governs two schemes, the retirement sums topping up scheme, RSTU in short, or the matched retirement savings scheme, MRSS in short. So this typically, for MRSS especially, targets seniors above the age of 55. So of course, I think for retirement is of course of a more immediate concern to those who are 55 and above. So mostly the seniors, but we do, venture into the younger crowd now, because we feel that saving is something that you can start early, is something that you should start early. Yeah, which is the purpose today also to, I think up to 3/4 of the room are actually below 55. Mm-hmm. So yes, this is exactly what I want to do, to encourage you guys to start topping up and save early.
Okay, so starting early. When it comes to money management, are there certain concerns, even before we dive into it, what would be some areas that we should look into when it comes to money management?
So when it comes to money management, a lot of people are coming forward. Jolene, can you teach me how to start investing? They're very excited to start on the investing bandwagon, and partly also because they are concerned with inflation. They want to make their money work harder for you. So when we actually conduct our introduction to personal investing, teaching people how to get started on their investing journey, a lot of them want to head to the top, and I even have a slide to show it. Right? A lot of them ask me, Jolene, can you tell me what are some of the financial products, that we should actually invest in? Which is a better financial product? And I would always tell them, it's great for your enthusiasm, but hold your horses, because investing is one subset of your financial planning. Before you even dip your toes into the investing water, what you should do is to make sure two pillars are anchored: the pillar of savings as well as the pillar of protection. And when we talk about savings, what we are really saying is your emergency savings. You have to establish your emergency savings of at least 3 to 6 months to cover your expenses. And of course, with your emergency savings, you really don't leave it to idle away. Today, we actually have quite a few instruments that have lower risk, but the liquidity is there. And that's what you need your emergency savings for. You need to be able to access it, at short notice without any risk to the principal. Mm-hmm. So some alternatives to invest your emergency savings could be your Singapore savings bond, some shorter-term fixed deposit, to a certain extent, maybe the 6-month T-bill, or even today we do see current accounts that actually offer higher interest. Now the second pillar that you should always anchor is that of protection. Right? So ensure you have adequate insurance protection. That itself is another question, isn't it? How do I know whether the coverage I currently have is adequate? Okay, according to the basic financial planning guide, there are some guidelines. Where death and total permanent disability are concerned, the guideline is about 9 times your annual income, and of course you can make the adjustments depending on the number of dependents you have, depending on the age of your dependents. Where critical illness is concerned, about 4 times your annual income. Okay, so for coverage, when you are assessing your insurance coverage, I always remind my learners, do not forget that existingly CPF also provides us with a basic baseline insurance coverage. We have our MediShield Life, we have the Dependency Protection Scheme, Home Protection Scheme, and of course the long-term care plans like CareShield and ElderShield. Okay, so when we assess our overall insurance coverage, remember what we already have with CPF, and if we assess we need more, okay, we top it up with the private insurers. So where insurance is concerned, I borrow the words of my colleagues, know what you need and buy what you need, okay, because it is an ongoing expense to shoulder the premium. So try not to exceed maybe 15% of your take-home pay in shouldering the premiums. Right? So anchor these two pillars, the savings pillar as well as the protection pillar, before you dive down into the investments.
So 15% is everything, right? All
your take-home.
Okay.
Yeah, your take-home.
Yeah. Okay. So we're showing this chart as well. Jolene has prepared this. Is this the steps to take, or?
We tend to have something a bit more structured so that everybody can take away. Of course, along the way you can tweak it, but really the first two lays the foundation. Okay, the first two steps lays the foundation. Right? Instead of everybody immediately trying to jump to the flight of steps and start shortlisting all the financial products. Right?
Would it be the same for those who are starting early, say 30 plus, versus those who are nearing retirement age?
Given that those who are nearing retirement age, okay, two things. With regards to savings, they should already have established some form of emergency savings. And of course, for them, the insurance coverage, perhaps it's more for them to review whether what they have is still necessary, is still relevant, so they can review that. Okay, because chances are they may already have started investing. Okay, but of course, for, let's say, a young career starter, okay, this is in fact very useful for them, right? Because we are really laying good financial planning habits for the overall financial well-being.
Jolene actually also mentioned CPF because it has lifelong interest, very stable financial returns as well, and that's also another source of income. For Serene, what would you add on? What do we need to have in the basics before you even start thinking about investing?
Okay, thanks, Jolene, for sharing. Yeah, so I do agree that CPF can play a part in this, right? Because ever since we started working, we all feel some pinch, right? 20% of our employment income goes into the CPF, and we don't see it. But when do we see it? When we use CPF monies for our housing purchase, for our medical claims, and things like that. Then that's when we start to appreciate the beauty of CPF, right? Yeah, so what really happens here is that we like to share the basic, what's happening in the CPF accounts. Your CPF savings actually earn good, stable interest. Okay, so this is an illustration. Over here, all of us have our ordinary account that earns 2.5%, the special account that earns 4%, and MediSave account that earns 4% per annum interest. Okay, so some of you might have heard about the extra interest, and this is how it works. On the first $60,000 of the combined CPF balances, you're earning an extra 1% interest. So that gives you 5% per annum interest effectively. Okay, when we turn 55, a fourth account will be set up, which is the retirement account, which also has 4% interest rate, same as the special account. And how the extra interest works here is this. The first 30,000 earns you extra 2% interest. And the next 30,000 earns extra 1% interest. And that means you can effectively earn 6% of effective interest on your CPF balances. That sounds really good, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to hold on there because I see a lot of people taking photos of this slide. It's very interesting, isn't it, that sometimes we're quite unsure of the percentage that we're actually earning in our CPF account with these interest rates. So feel free to take the photos that we're showing right here.
Yeah, sure.
Serene, please.
And why did I say that it's stable? Some of you might not know that some of our floor rates are actually legislated. So for the ordinaries account, there's a floor rate of 2.5%, which means that the interest rate cannot go below 2.5. Right? And to encourage more people to save up and to allow our retirement savings to grow more, the government has also extended the floor rate of 4% on the SA, MA, and RA rates till 31st December 2025. So this is like a guaranteed, 4% in the CPF accounts. And currently for Q4 2024, the interest rate for SA, MA, and RA is 4.14%. Right? I think we see it in the newspapers, it's published. These interest rates are reviewed on a quarterly basis. Yeah, so this is something that I think is actually quite a good interest rate compared to the interest environment now. I believe the last T-bill rate was 2.99 that closed in end October. So I think a 4.14% is actually significantly higher. Yeah.
You're very convincing when you say that to
I
me.
hope you guys are
Alright,
convinced.
yeah. Okay, so we've got our CPF, we've got our savings, and also our policies, insurance, all of that. You were mentioning about the two pillars. What do I do next after that? Maybe Serene can continue?
Yeah. So I think we have shared about the good stuff about CPF interest, right? So what's even better? Let me share with you the power of compound interest. Okay, just look at this illustration here. Our very financially savvy CPF member here has decided to make a top-up of $8,000 to herself and also $8,000 to her loved one. And as a result of this top-up, she will enjoy up to $800 of income tax payable rebate because she is entitled to $16,000 worth of qualifying tax relief. Okay. Not only that, this $8,000 that she is topping up now, it will grow to double in 18 years, and also to 4 times in just 36 years, right? Just by leaving your monies in the CPF account. Yeah, so this follows the rule of 72, if some of you guys know. It's a simplified formula to determine how long it takes for your investment amount to double, right, given the rate of return. So 72 divided by the rate of return of 4% on our CPF account, that means 18 years for every dollar to double. Yeah, so perhaps you can use this formula to see, how much savings you might want to put in now and how long it will take to double.
Mm-hmm. Jolene, how might you recommend that we can consider about investing our monies?
Okay, so frequently, when I bring investing to my learners and I ask them, what does investing means to you? Maybe to the floor, you can also think about what does investing means to you? Honestly, the answer that I get back a lot is, to me, investing is just making my money work harder, right? And they're not wrong, but what I do challenge them is, go beyond that. Because when we make our money work harder, to what purpose, to what end? It should be to help us achieve our financial goals. So when we map out our financial goals, some of them could be longer term. I think it's very close to Singaporeans' heart. One of the longer financial goals that I often hear is retirement at a certain age, being able to live a certain lifestyle. And of course, certain more medium terms, like maybe saving up for the child's tertiary education, or some are even shorter, saving up and accumulating enough for a home down payment. So your financial goal should be the backbone, okay, to set your investment objectives and your investment horizon. And always make it a point to set aside your investment budget. Okay, we recommend 10% of your income. Even if you can only start small, strongly encourage you to start now. As what Serene has shared, you will be able to reap the effect and the impact of compound interest that across time, you will see it work to a greater extent for you, right? So when you eventually select your financial products, do also make sure that it is aligned to your risk profile. And that is very important, okay? Because right at the start I mentioned, we see so many financial products today. When we have coffee discussions over coffee breaks, our friends may share with us. They may share certain aspects like the returns, but the risk, we may not be very sure about it. So make sure it is aligned to your risk profile. And risk profile, to be honest, is not just our risk tolerance, how much, emotionally are we able to accept it, but our financial capacity, our financial capacity to absorb losses as well. So I would say, the fact that we have choices is a good thing, but we have to actually do our due diligence, right? Make sure that when we select our investment products, we do so with diversification. Okay, we match the type of product with the kind of investment horizon that we have, right? And then we always have to review our investment portfolio.
Jolene, what you're saying actually allows me to understand that there's a difference between savings and investing, right? Because on your chart, you're saying that first we must have our 2 pillars, and then after that, then do we consider investing? Do you find that there are some people who might have a misconception with that and not being able to tell the difference, thinking that I would have enough money for myself?
Right, so savings tends to bring upon the notion that it's a bit more passive, right? You're just setting aside a portion of your take-home income, and that is important, right? So with that, we have the notion called emergency savings, because with our emergency saving, it has to be there. So when we even decide to put our savings to work, we have to be careful with the type of instruments. That is why I mentioned, probably where emergency savings are concerned, you look at instruments that can give us a degree of liquidity, meaning you are able to access it at short notice. The risk can be high as well, right? Whereas investing, it does suggest, being more active, putting our money to harder work so that, it can not just work harder, but to outstrip inflation and eventually help us to work towards achieving our financial goals. Because if we do not invest our savings, then the certainty is the value will eventually be eroded by inflation. right?
Serene, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask Jolene another question again. Because you've met so many different people, and there are about 3/4 of our participants right here below 55, so maybe 30-something, 40. Have you met anybody who made bad decisions when it comes to risk assessment or investing versus savings, for example?
I mean, I'll be first to confess, I have made certain decisions that didn't pay off so well as well. I think today, if you speak with any investors, in our portfolio, we probably will have sustained some losses at some point in time because we have heard high risk, high return, low risk, low return. So we can calibrate the risk that we are willing to take, right, to be able to achieve certain level of return. But never once have we thought that we can totally abstain from losses because we don't have a crystal ball. Right? We do our best, we do our due diligence, we don't have a crystal ball. Right? And with that, you may be thinking, oh no, then how should we proceed? Is loss a certainty? Okay, when we look at a portfolio basis and you invest over time, the benefit is, okay, a portfolio that is well diversified can help you to lower certain risks, right? At the same time, you will ride out volatility. Okay, but later on, I will share some of the pitfalls because those losses can be a bit harder to swallow, and honestly, those are the ones that I would advise everyone to look out for and to avoid them.
Okay, so Serene, share with us some of your basic principles when it comes to investing.
Okay, thank you. So I concur with what Jolene has shared earlier. It really depends on your risk profile, right? Not everyone is the same here, not everyone thinks alike, and based on your life stages, you also have different needs and wants, right? So I would like to share an example of a friend of mine. Yeah, she used to invest in stocks, and she's not all that good. She just reads, websites or listens to what her friends say, like, oh, just buy into tech stocks or real estate, things like that. They are
Do you mind if I ask about the age group that your friend is in?
I think about early 40.
Okay.
Yeah, so she did that, and after that, she shared with me that she lost sleep over that. Yeah, and her heart plunges when, the share prices drop. And I think at the end of it all, she shared that her fragile heart can't take it anymore, so she sold all her stocks. And she has stuck to treasury bills since then, and of course making CPF top-ups because these are, safer investment options for her. So just like my friend who is more risk-averse and perhaps not so well-known, does not have such good knowledge on complex financial instruments, the CPF, actually, the system is really good for this group of members. But of course, if you are a guru in financial instruments and investing, like Jolene over here, yeah, CPF actually does work as a diversification tool for you as well. So yeah, it works for everyone, right?
Yeah. So now we understand why you're in the center seat.
I've got lots to learn from Jolene
Yeah,
as
we're
well.
looking to you for expert advice. You were mentioning about the different pitfalls. How do we look out for that?
Okay, let me share with you 3 very common pitfalls. The first being what we call certain behavioral bias. See, there has been an evidence-based study to show that when people are faced with more complex decisions, and to some that may be investment-related, they tend to take mental shortcuts and display certain behavioral bias that will affect their decisions, right? That will otherwise influence their decisions, and it may actually overcome certain rationality. So we do teach, what are these behavioral bias and how to look out for them, how to mitigate them. Some of them are actually more emotional in nature, such as loss aversion, maybe being overconfident. And some of them, got to do with the way we process information. A very common one that we see is what we call mental accounting. So sometimes, we do hear people investing maybe their CPF money, and they take risks as compared to using their own cash because mentally, this mental accounting has kind of taken over, that they feel that they are not able to access, so it's okay, I can use it. But actually, if you take a step back, it is still very much your own money. It is still you investing, so your risk profile, your decisions should not change just because you're unable to access your money, right? Then, of course, we also have the herd behavior that is most common, right? So talking about this herd behavior, there's this incident that I personally encountered more than 10 years ago. I've never been able to forget it. It's a little bit of an extreme example of herd behavior. But what happened was more than 10 years ago. My husband and I, we were on leave. So we just went to the nearby coffee shop to have our morning coffee. Sitting behind us was a table of young seniors, retirees. I couldn't help overhearing the conversation. I was not, deliberately trying to eavesdrop, but they were speaking quite boisterously. So, yeah. So anyway, one gentleman was telling either his friend or neighbor he said, "Hey, go and buy the stock of XYZ company." So I heard that. I was like, "Wow, not bad, Uncle. You actually know shipping stocks." Okay, so I just drank my coffee, and his friend replied, "Okay, I will go and buy. By the way, what does this company do?" Okay, which is a very good question because you're buying to a company. You should know what is the core business of this company. Now, the reply from the gentleman, I almost choked on my coffee, if I can. So, he replied, "I also don't know, just go and buy," right? So that reply, if I can be honest, it sit into my memory forever because firstly, it shows me that some people invest without knowing what it means. They invest into a stock market, without knowing what the company does. And herd behavior can potentially be very powerful. So of course, I didn't know whether, the auntie really took his advice to buy or not. Okay, but that sent a very strong message to me that sometimes, we can fall prey to herd behavior. But remember, what may work for your colleague, what may work for your neighbor, may not work for you because you are in very different circumstances, your needs are different, your financial goals are different. So over coffee, sure, let's share best practices, let's share what we're doing, but take it back to yourself. Assess it with, does this work for me or not, right? So that's the first pitfall. Okay, be mindful. Okay, and try to manage this bias. Of course, if you want to know more, right, you're more than welcome to sign up for a talk with IFL to find out more. Okay, now, secondly, what we often see is trying to time the market, buy low, sell high. Again, we are not saying that you can't make a profit, you can't make a return, but question is, can you make a significant return on a consistent and sustainable basis? That's the question we want to ask. Investing is not our full-time job. Okay, we have our work, we have our family, right? So if we are constantly trying to time the market, it may add certain anxiety, it may add the volatility that will deny us of achieving our final outcomes. Right? Instead, fall back to diversification, what has been proven, asset allocation, stick to regular investing, okay, which may also include dollar cost averaging. Okay, so that is the second pitfall, trying to time the market. Thirdly, I strongly caution against investing with entities or investing in products that are not under the MAS regulation, that's not under the MAS control. Right? These may not be illegal, they may not be scams, but the fact that it doesn't come under MAS regulations does expose the individual to certain risks. In the event of a dispute, for example, you will not be able to seek any redress under FIDREC, Financial Issues Dispute Resolution Center. Okay, and today it's actually very easy to ascertain whether a particular entity or a particular product comes under MAS regulation. We can go to the website and actually just check through the FI directory, the investor alert list.
Not the entity's website, because that they can say anything.
MAS, yes.
All right, so the official website where you can find out actual information. When it comes to balancing risks, Serene, do you have any advice on what we can do in order to not expose ourselves to too much risks?
So I believe that CPF acts as a safety net for all of us to ensure that we have a basic level of retirement savings at the end of the day, despite the investments that you have, right? So this is also why we have strict withdrawal rules in place, right? Because we all know there's this saying that, oh, my money's all locked up in CPF, I can't even touch it, right? And this is for a good reason, right? It's actually reserved for your retirement. So, even scammers can't touch your monies, right? So that's really a good thing. And things like top-ups that you make as well as irreversible and cannot be withdrawn in lump sum. There are even some limits that are put in place for, say, for example, the CPF investment scheme. You need to leave at least 20,000 in your ordinary account and 40,000 in your special account. Why is that so? Has anyone wondered why this magic number? Okay, as I shared earlier in my previous slide, there's extra interest earned on the first 60,000 of your CPF savings, right? So this limit set is actually to enable our members to earn this extra interest from the government. Yeah, it's not to lock up your monies, for our own good. Yeah, so it's for your good actually. Yeah, so we do have such, safeguards in place, and of course, given the inherent risk of investment, even though the CPF investment scheme allows investment in relatively lower risk profile instruments, but still, all kinds of investment comes with risk, right? So this 20K and 40K limit set also helps to cushion, that kind of risk that we have in investing. Yeah, so this is how CPF adds to a layer of safety net to your savings. So some of you might ask, okay, I have my pot of gold now. What do I do then? What happens next? So that's when CPF Life comes into place, right? So the CPF Life is an insurance product that takes away the worry of you outliving your savings when you grow old. So for life, whatever age you live to, you will receive a stream of monthly income. Yeah, so even if you're not working or your retirement savings have run out, you will still continue to receive this amount of monies. So you can retire with dignity without relying on anyone or your children and be a burden if that's what you're worried about. So we have three schemes. One, the escalating plan, which gives you growing payouts. The standard plan, which gives you steady payouts. And the basic plan, which gives you progressively lower payouts. So which scheme is the best? Which plan is the best, you might ask me. So in return, I'm going to ask you 4 questions, right? Number 1, what kind of retirement lifestyle are you looking out for? Are you going for the crazy rich Asian kind of, retirement lifestyle? Or, just a basic one, can just eat cai fan lah, can do, right? Okay, second, in order to fund that kind of retirement lifestyle that you want, how much do you need per month? And 3, how much savings do you have in your CPF now? Do you have any shortfall or is it enough? If you don't have enough, you can consider making a CPF top-up via cash or CPF transfer to boost your retirement savings. And like what we shared earlier, it's good to start small and do it regularly so that you can earn from the interest and the power of compound interest as well. And then 4th, you don't have to start getting your payout at the age of 65, which is the earliest age anyone can start payout. Okay, you can actually defer to the age of 70, and with every year that you defer between 65 to 70, your monthly payout will increase up to 7%. So that really sounds like a good deal to me. And if you have your own savings in your banks that's earning a lower interest rate, you can use that to supplement your retirement income first before you get your payout, say, at maybe 68 or 70 when you need it.
If you don't mind, I'm going to dive straight into some of the questions that are coming in. Thank you so much for scanning the QR code and sending in your questions. I'm seeing a lot of interest in the ordinary account for CPF. Can Serene help us with these questions? How do I use CPF ordinary account for investment without risk or without losing any money? And how much should I use for housing? Can you help us with that?
Okay, so I don't think I can give a definite answer, right? So like we mentioned earlier, any investment comes with some form of risk, right? So no form of investment is risk-free. But that said, because our OA interest rate is 2.5%, so if the interest rate environment, say for example T-bills, right, it's backed by the government, so it's a relatively safer instrument, I would say. And if it's a good, above 3%, I would say that if you time it properly and you don't lose interest for the months that the monies are out of your CPF account, it can actually be a good way to earn more by investing in T-bills. I mean, that's my personal take. But I think, like I said earlier, the interest rates are coming down for T-bills, so that could be some trade-off over here, and you could just, be just hitting a 2.5% as well if you're minusing the cost involved, right? Yeah, so this is really up to you guys to time your investments well and study the rates of return. As to how much you use for your housing purchase, yeah, that also it's an opportunity cost, right? If you're using the monies in your OA account, which comes at 2.5%, it really depends on how much your housing loan or your mortgage loan is at if you have to take a housing loan. Yeah, so whichever works better, and you can try to use a portion of it. I would always advise, just use a portion instead of emptying your OA account, which is what most people do. I think I have some colleagues who have done that, and some of them, on hindsight, they felt that they could have left some monies in their OA and used their own, cash savings in their bank account to actually pay for their house.
Okay, 2 questions for Jolene related to savings. One, do you have recommendations for savings at different stages, say at 30, 40, 50? Okay, so are there amounts that you recommend? The other question is, when it comes to savings, what would you say to someone in their retirement years, especially facing escalating living costs? So 2 questions related to savings.
Sure. Okay, so the first on savings at different age, we actually do recommend what we call a certain savings ratio, right? 20%, but as I always tell my learners, if 20% of your take-home pay is a stretch, at least start with 10%. In fact, this is what I prescribe to my daughter. When I give them the allowance, right, $2.80 per day, I say put 30 cents right into the piggy bank. Okay, what I hope to impart to them is that when they make savings a habit, regardless of their income level going forward, they will make it. Okay, they will make it happen, because savings should be the priority. It should not be the crumbs of the leftover. Okay, so regardless of age group, regardless of income, make sure we can at least channel 20%, right? And your take-home pay, because 20% of gross, it goes to our CPF, so that's a given. Okay, and then of course, what do we use that for? Okay, firstly, we establish the emergency savings as done. Thereafter, we can channel them towards investing. Okay, we can channel them towards investing. Okay, so that's the first question. Sorry, for the second question, if you don't mind.
For those who are in their retirement stage, especially with living costs going up, what are your recommendations?
Okay, so for the retirees, given that they're already in the retirement stage, some of them may or may not be earning an income. Okay, but for those who are thinking of taking on flexi work, I would encourage everyone to be an open mind, because personally, for me, the idea of retirement is really evolving. It's evolving because life expectancy is on the rise. We have a longer life expectancy, which is important for us to stay gainfully engaged. Otherwise, 20, 30 years is a very long time to just be drinking coffee at a coffee shop, right? So probably increasingly, the generations entering into retirement are probably having more experience in the workforce. We talk about knowledge, skill sets. They can continue to monetize those at their own pace, at their own leisure. And not only it keeps you gainfully engaged, but it gives you another income stream as well. Okay, so that is one. Secondly, right, if you talk about how do we make ends meet, because we are no longer earning an income, thankfully, we do have schemes here and there to help us. But apart from that, if the pot is fixed, okay, then we have to practice certain budgeting, like learning how to stretch our dollar, looking out for certain deals, etc. For those retirees, whose children are actually supporting them monthly, we do ask them, you may want to consider, whether you want to request your child to, instead of giving you full cash, right, whether will it be feasible, will the sums work out if your child were to top up your CPF account instead? Right? Because then they have a dual benefit, right? Your child would be able to derive certain tax benefit up to 8,000, okay? And at the same time, because of the interest rates that CPF is giving, it's actually helping you to save. Okay? The truth is, when we reach retirement, we will not use the whole pot right at the start. It has to stretch out and last us from retirement to the end, right? So that's why CPF Life, in my humble opinion, right, really helps to allay that worry of outliving our savings.
Yeah. I will always remember Jolene's tip for today. For investment advice, do not go to kopitiam. Do not go to coffee shop. Yeah, might not get the best advice there. Are there immediate actions that I can take? Do you have any tips about what I can do right now if I'm thinking about investing or starting to invest?
So for the retiree, right, when you're starting, you should still stay invested. Please do not get me wrong. You should still stay invested. But when you look at your portfolio, you have to calibrate the amount of risk. You have to calibrate the amount of risk, because the truth is, runway is shorter. Okay, when I say runway, it's not really just life expectancy. Your investment runway is shorter. We do not have that time to be able to recuperate from certain losses. Okay, so we have to calibrate the kind of risk. So you may want to pivot to certain lower risk instruments. Okay, it doesn't mean that you absolutely steer clear of equities, stocks, right? But you probably shouldn't be investing in very high beta, very volatile stocks, right? Maybe more dividend-paying stocks, okay, that give you the income effect of quarterly dividends, half-yearly dividends. Okay, small bonds, right? And we talk about bonds apart from Singapore savings bonds. Perhaps some corporate bonds, if you assess the risk is still within your profile, is still within your risk tolerance level. Okay, so still stay invested, but be mindful over your investment portfolio.
Serene, any advice about immediate steps that I can take to start investing?
Yeah, so like what Jolene shared earlier, right? What she shared with her children in saving up. So I feel CPF, we can take it as a piggy bank as well, right? We inculcate this habit of saving by making small and regular top-ups via our gyro arrangement. And of course, every little dollar counts, right? With the power of compounding interest, it can lead to a significant amount of growth over time. And of course, when we are talking about CPF savings, I think it's really important to have a regular habit of doing that because we all have competing needs, right? For the younger crowd, I know traveling is no longer a want, right? It's a need. We need to get away from work, run away from realities of life. And for those who are starting a family, milk powder, diapers, sending your kids to enrichment classes, all these are competing needs. But maybe it's time for us to take a step back and think for ourselves as well. I'm sure parents wouldn't want to be a financial burden to their kids when they grow old. So what can you do for yourself and your loved ones? So that means starting today, putting in some monies towards your retirement savings. So this can actually help reduce the need for family support when you grow older.
Okay, let's go into the questions that you have been sending in through the QR code. Jolene, for someone who is maybe a little bit uncertain about job security, there might be retrenchment in the years to come, how can we manage our finances effectively, especially when our primary source of income is gone?
Okay, so of course in the last few years, we have weathered through some economic uncertainties. Even today, if we look at the global economy, it does look very uncertain, right? And as Singapore, sometimes we wonder how are we going to navigate forward. And then when it brings down to the personal level, we do worry, okay, if I were to lose my job, right? If I were to lose my job, would I still be able to ensure that the family can go on? So this goes back to really the basic money management. And that's why we cannot stress enough the importance of establishing that emergency savings. In fact, I vividly recall when COVID first hit, there was an article that upon interviewing, maybe only 1 in 4 said they are able to cope for 6 months if they were to lose their job. So we cannot stress enough. Why we advocate 3 to 6 months emergency savings, right? So for regular salary employee, maybe 3 months. But if your job actually exposes you to more volatility, for example, you may be a platform worker, then it's even more important that you actually have that 6 months cushion, okay? Have that 6 months cushion so that if in the event, okay, of redundancy, you have that time to look for a job while ensuring that food continuously to get put on the table. Today, the economy that we are in is very fast changing. I often tell my children, in the future, you may be working in an area, in a job that doesn't exist today, that I probably would not know anything. So the skills future, the lifelong learning, is not just an initiative there, but it is really very commendable because it ensures the relevance that we have, right, that we have in this fast-changing economy so that we can upgrade ourselves. So be very open, right, be very open. For me, when I left corporate banking, it was for family reasons. I'll be honest, I never thought that I would pivot into trading, right? But I was open-minded about it. I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. It's a transferable skill set. And truth be told, I'm actually very happy doing this job, right? I'm very happy doing this job. Did I make use of my skills future? Absolutely. I got myself the trainer certification, right? So lifelong learning, make it a way of life, make it a way of life. And last but not least, when we look at, when crisis hits, we have to also be prepared to make certain adjustments. We cannot always have our cake and eat it. There may be certain lifestyle adjustments that have to be made. So communication with the family member to get a consensus and support from everybody is important. And before we even get there, we also want to caution against what you probably heard, lifestyle inflation, whereby when income goes up, we think that, okay, we can afford a little bit more, let's dine out a bit more. Public transport is too tiring, okay? Since I'm earning more, I can go home daily in a more comfortable transport. Okay, be very careful of lifestyle inflation because going up the lifestyle escalator is easy. You will agree with me, coming down, not so easy, all right? Not so easy. So when we are earning more, be it in the form of a bonus, be it in the form of an increment, okay, try to maintain the level of spending. I'm not saying you can't treat yourself or your family to a good meal or a holiday, okay, but try not to let it creep into your lifestyle too much, right?
Two questions regarding CPF for Serene, please. Should I use CPF or cash to pay for my housing loan? Because if I'm using CPF, I'll need to pay back after the sales. Would you think that using cash to pay my loan might be better?
Yeah, I think that really depends on how much cash you have, right? If you have $1 million of cash in your bank account that's earning an interest rate of, 1% or so, of course I would recommend you using your cash. The truth to be told, I think most of us do not have that amount of cash on hand. So it's really a decision that you have to make. It's probably a good balance, right, between cash and CPF savings for the payment, I would recommend. And it's really for you to work out the sums yourself based on your financial information now on hand, how much cash you have. Perhaps some of them are really locked up in investments. Is it then worth, divesting some of your investments and making turning it into liquid cash to make your payments? Yeah, so that's also something that you can consider.
Mm-hmm. Another question with regards to CPF as well. I'm saving up with my partner for HDB down payment. Would you recommend to continue to top up our special accounts to take advantage of the high interest?
Okay, so I'll come back to this point again that it really depends, right? It's not a yes or no answer. Mm-hmm. So I'm very heartened to know that you guys are thinking about topping up to the special account. But of course, I do encounter some cases where young couples or young Singaporeans, they have made the top up to their special account, but later when they think of using their SA monies or actually their OA monies when they transfer to SA for housing payout, housing payments, they come and appeal for a reversal. And I think we wish to highlight that this is also stated in the application form that top-ups are irreversible. They are reserved for retirement needs and cannot be withdrawn for other purposes, such as for housing, right? So this is something that we wish to highlight to everyone. And in order to make an informed decision, think about what are the commitments you might have down the line, not just at the moment when I have no intention to touch this sum of money, so I'll just transfer all of them to the special account. But this act of yours is irreversible. And one day, should you need this OA monies that were originating from your OA, it's gone. It's now in your SA and it's reserved for special for your retirement needs. So do take into account if you have housing needs and you intend to use your OA monies for housing payments, do keep that in your OA for your housing mortgages.
May I add on
yes,
that?
Please. Yes, please.
Right, because as Serene was explaining, it brought me down memory lane a little. Because I remember when my husband and I, we first were planning to get married. A house, was quite imminent, was top of our priority. And back then, we were just starting out in the workforce for barely 1-2 years. So savings, wasn't that much, right? And we had to actually use our OA to be able to help us afford the purchase of our home. And if I remember, even after we got the flat for the next 1-2 years, The monthly installments were supported by our ordinary account. But having said that, at the back of our minds, we were always mindful that our OA has a dual purpose. Apart from helping us fulfill housing needs, it will also help us to boost our retirement adequacy. So for us, we also know once our earning powers increase, let's see if we can try to switch the installment to partial cash and partial OA. Right? It's about balancing, like what Serene said. You have to look at the circumstances that you are in. Right? Because back then we were young, we have to really manage liquidity. So yeah, we fall back on the OA. But again, we were always very mindful that when circumstances permit, let's try to be able to use some cash instead to support the housing. Right? And of course, when we get our bonus, can we actually use part of it, to pay down the housing loan, as opposed to just spending it elsewhere. Right?
I've got two questions which are quite similar. Jolene, maybe can help with this. I would like to invest, but I still have loans. Another one is I would like to invest, but I'm still trying to save up enough. How should I prioritize my money? So when it comes to making decisions about wanting to invest, one still have loans, the other one is concerned about having enough savings.
Okay, let's talk about loans first. Loans should be paid down. Okay. Again, there are a few types of loan. If it is a housing loan that you're talking, which most of us, usually when we buy a house, we have to take on a housing loan.
Yep.
If you don't need to, we're very happy for you. But generally, most of the population, they actually have to take on a loan in order to purchase a house. So then you kind of factor it into your monthly expense, your monthly cash flow, right? Okay, so you can continue investing. But if the type of loans that we are talking about are credit cards in nature, right, then those really have to take on higher priority. Because today, what is the interest on a credit card? We used to say 24%, but take a look. You just go to any of the bank's website, you're probably looking at between 26 to 28% on a compound basis. Okay, so where will we find an investment product that can overcome 26 to 28% without taking a sky-high risk? So pay off your loans first, okay? Pay off your loans first. It's like having a bottle, you're trying to fill it with water. That's your investment. But there's a big hole at the bottom leaking out. You're never going to make it work. Okay, so always prioritize paying off those loans first, right? Those problem loans that may be credit card in nature. And that is why, linking back to what I said, be very careful about lifestyle inflation, because today, we do hear, you have your buy now, pay later schemes, you may have certain credit card installment schemes. So those can kind of future impulse purchase, okay, let's be honest. Right? I'm not saying those are bad, but we need to use them responsibly, right?
Okay, a question about CPF Life. Some time back we saw email about getting $3,300 per month. How much should I need to top up in CPF Life in order to receive a monthly payback of 3 to 6K per month? Does this apply similarly to different age groups as well?
Okay, so I think we have quite a few tools on our CPF website that can help you estimate how much do you need in your CPF account in order to give you the kind of retirement income that you want. So I think we have a slide later, which is the CPF Retirement Payout Planner, that can actually help you do just that. So just by inputting your retirement payout plan goals, it will tell you how much you need at this point of time, and then you can assess, how much do you have enough, or do you need to top up more in order to get that amount? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can actually scan that QR code and you can actually do that simulation yourself.
Okay, Serene, maybe you can share with us a little bit more about this retirement payout planner?
Yeah, so it's actually a relatively new tool. I'm not sure how many of you guys have come across. I believe there's a festival, at a festival hall, there's a booth over there where people can try out the planners also. But yeah, feel free to scan the QR code. And this is where, like I said, you just set your retirement payout goal. Say, for example, I want to receive $3,300 a month. Right, and what are the projections like? What is your current balances? What is the interest rate? And based on the interest rate that is currently in our CPF account, it will calculate for you. And of course, if it's short, then you can also simulate. If I top up $1,000 on a monthly basis, how much would that lead to? And will I be able to meet my target? So this is what you can also simulate with top-ups or CPF transfers to see how you can make your monies work for you.
Okay. Jolene, is there a guideline on the recommended amounts that we should put in each asset class?
Okay, so rather than working with a fixed amount, right, because at different life stages, our investment pool will probably evolve. We prefer to probably work with percentages, how many percent. You may have heard of the 60-40%, 60% into equity, 40% into bonds for a start. But as we progress through the seasons of life, then probably you may want to actually calibrate it because equities generally carries a higher risk than fixed income bonds instruments. So you may just want to cut back on that, but you can start with 60-40. Importantly, even if you do invest 60% into a particular asset class like equity, make sure you diversify within that asset class. Okay, make sure you diversify within that asset class.
Okay. Serene, special accounts is giving 4% interest, right? Should I invest my special account savings?
Okay, so to this question, you have to consider if you can outperform, right, this 4%. If you are fairly confident, you are a guru like Jolene over here, yeah, you can go ahead, right? And if you can, of course, you have to take into consideration some of the costs involved, like fees, brokerage fees, and things like that. And of course, say, for example, transferring your monies out of the CPF accounts will actually lose CPF account interest for those months. So these are some of the opportunity costs that you have to be concerned about as well. But if you can beat this, then yes, please go ahead. And like I said, all forms of investment carry some form of risk. So if this is something that you can tolerate and this is within your risk profile, then please go ahead.
Danny?
Yes.
Yeah, because there's also a question that I have many participants coming to me. So apart from what Serene has shared, I also add on to them. If you're thinking about investing your CPF SA and maybe a particular instrument can give you a projected return, maybe 5%, 6%. Do also ask yourself, for the additional 5 to 6%, how much risk are you willing to undertake? Because those are projected returns. They are not guaranteed returns. Right? Are you prepared to take the additional risk just for that 1 to 2%? That is a question that only you yourself can answer because, again, you know your risk profile best. Okay, the second consideration, also don't forget the interest given by CPF on the accounts. They are what we call a compound basis. Right? So the method of calculation of interest also plays a part.
For our guru here, Jolene, another question. If I would like to get started into global equities or bonds, would you recommend that I should start with banks or financial planners? How should I go about doing it?
Okay, if you are really, really new to it, and it really doesn't harm sitting down with someone who can shed more perspective to you, because my experience is when a person comes to a new product, they generally look at, maybe tell me a little bit about the risk, and I want to know the returns. Okay, so if you're really new to this instrument, do the due diligence, and sometimes it really doesn't hurt, all right, to go to a bank when you listen to a financial advisor, explain more holistically about that product to you. Okay, unless, of course, you may work in the financial industry, you are already aware of certain risks, etc. And even when you sit down with a financial advisor, okay, don't just listen passively. Okay, try to ask certain questions, right, so that you actually know what you're getting yourself into. Some of the questions I always encourage, people to ask is, firstly, what's the worst case scenario? Just ask what's the worst case scenario, because it is actually the onus of the financial advisor to explain to you, okay, whether is it that there is a possibility, that the negative returns can erode to zero. Okay, at least you know what you're getting yourself into. Now, the second question that I always encourage people to ask is, if I need to terminate the investment earlier, what is the penalty that I have to actually forfeit? What are some of the costs? Right, so make sure you ask these questions, if it has not been properly explained to you.
We had a meeting before this session and we were chatting about some of the topics that we should cover. There's a question from self-employed persons related to that. How can someone who's self-employed plan for retirement or even plan for investment? Can the two of you share? Starting from Serene?
Maybe I'll speak on the CPF part. Yeah, so for self-employed members, I believe that you just need to pay for your Medisave liabilities, right? And so on top of that, you can actually make top-ups to your 3 accounts in order to save up more in your ordinary and special account for housing purchases as well as your retirement needs. So this is actually qualified for tax relief as well. So for self-employed persons. Yeah, so I think this is something that you can take a step to think about building up your retirement savings in CPF, even though this is not a mandatory thing.
Jolene, do you have any advice for self-employed persons?
So for self-employed individuals, and we are not necessarily just talking about platform workers, you are talking about business owners as well. To many of them, the business itself is an investment, right? So yeah, that's fine. And like what Serene said, try to spread your eggs among the basket. CPF is also one basket because it also gives the dual benefit of taxation rebate, right? And then of course, for self-employed individual, what I always tell is try to separate your personal finance and your corporate finance, especially for certain sole proprietors as well. It tends to co-mingle. Keep it separate, right? Keep it separate, your company entity and your own self. Make sure you don't exclusively just fall back on the business. Okay, always have your own personal nest egg.
I'd just like to make a little advertisement for Jolene as well. You are representing the Institute for Financial Literacy.
That's right.
They actually have free clinics that's happening in the hall, and that's on your financial health. So they're running financial health clinics right now. You can actually get your free financial health checkup right over there. Are you going to be there?
I will probably pop by, yeah, I'll probably pop by. So indeed, we offer the one-to-one because this is, to be honest, this initiative is birthed based on feedback from the ground that, learners come to us, can you do one-to-one? Okay, because some of them may not be comfortable raising questions in a public platform. So we will hear from you, we will ask you certain questions to get a better understanding of your situation, okay, of your circumstances. And then from there, we will give what we call bespoke information and advice on how you can close the gaps in your financial planning.
That's wonderful.
Can I take the first queue number?
Yeah, you're getting a lot of fans right here.
For you have to buy me coffee first.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand for Jolene and Serene.